are back on Morning Line. Thanks for joining us. John Harris with us, Tennessee Firearms Association, and we're talking about the gun debate out there. The latest, we've touched on already the situation at the Nashville Fairgrounds and what's going to happen there with gun shows. More to come on that. But let's go to Barbara. Barbara, good morning.
Good morning.
Hey, Barbara.
Hey, I have a question for Nick.
For me? Okay.
Why aren't you having someone on your show that represents the other side of the question? Why you have this gentleman on there? You're not being fair to the ones of us that think that there needs to be better background checks, better gun control, and better ways of keeping hands out of terrorists and mentally ill people. If you're going to have the debate, then
Sure.
you should have both sides.
Yeah, and I appreciate your call on that. It's not so much a debate this morning, but I understand what you're saying. We have guests on, and usually as opposed to having them on at the same time where it does become a debate where it's back and forth and not as much gleaned, we sometimes bring them on individually. So, Barbara, we've had folks on before who are on the other side of the gun issue as well, and we do that. And John, we have him come on a lot of times when there are actions taken, like what this Fair Board has done. And we've done stories on that already to address these issues. But again, you know what? She brought up a point, and a lot of times when guests on either side of it come on, it's my role to try to play devil's advocate and bring some up, walking the middle line as best as I can. But she brings up about the issue of mental illness and the problems with, you can't look at someone and say, this guy's a nut. And yet, if he has everything else in place, his medical records are sealed because of the HIPAA laws. And I know you've even said, and others, that the concern is, these weapons getting into the hands of crazy people. And,
absolutely. That's a legitimate concern.
And how do we stop that? And I hear what Barbara's saying about that. Is there a good answer for that?
What we have experienced, because the Tennessee Firearms Association does take the position that someone with a severe mental illness, and it's a sliding scale, keep that in mind, okay? The mental illness issue is particularly difficult to deal with. One reason is, as you've made reference to, is the HIPAA laws, where if someone, it's basically an honor system if you answer the purchase form.
Yeah.
But someone could lie and say, I've never had a mental illness or a diagnosis.
And they can't check it.
And they can't check it.
If you lie about a felony, they can check that.
They can check that.
But they can't check your mental. I mean, the HIPAA, just so you know, went into effect, what was it, 10 years ago? Something like that, where it messed with us. We used to be able to call the hospital to get the condition of a gunshot victim.
Right.
No more. So what it does, though, and it's a good law, I mean, it protects your privacy as a patient, that they're not allowed to release to anyone details without your permission of your condition. And again, it's private stuff.
And,
so
and mental health records are even more protected than just general health records. Now, the other problem with the mental health illness issue is you can have people who could legally buy a gun, say at age 30, and by age 35, they've developed a mental illness. So they're still a possessor.
Well, I mean, there's just nothing we can do about that. I mean, I don't know how you stop that.
No, you really can't. About all you can do is when someone goes through the system, particularly the court system, and they're either found to be insane or a conservator's appointed or somehow or another, like sometimes happens with involuntary committals. Once a court has decided that they're mentally impaired, then you can do something. And our laws do provide for that. The slippery slope is the fact that the medical records laws just don't let us verify. Another problem that falls into this mental illness category is how do you define a prohibiting mental illness? So, for example, and I've had this discussion with psychiatrists, someone who's tragically, suddenly lost a child or a spouse in an accident could have a temporary diagnosis of mental illness, say depression, that they get over and they're perfectly normal. And must that be treated differently for purposes of gun laws or anything else than the person who's developed schizophrenia that's never going to recover from it?
And I see the distinction there, but that would have to be made. Schizophrenia or someone who's psychotic doesn't necessarily mean they're violent. Not all schizophrenics are violent by any means, but that's someone you're going to want to look real hard at before you allow them to have a weapon, if you could know that. Let's go to Tony. Tony, good morning.
Good morning.
Hey, Tony, go ahead.
Yeah, I find it interesting that they're talking about releasing all these nonviolent offenders from prison so they can get their voting rights restored and vote in the election, which we all pretty well know how most of them would vote. And I think that's probably what's behind that. But I don't hear them talking about restoring their gun rights. You can. Let me just say this: the fact fact that they say that they're wanting to make the country safer is the reason behind taking assault weapons away or tightening down gun restrictions. Well, why isn't that same group of people lobbying to implement education in the schools for gun safety? What they don't say says a lot. What they don't do says a lot. And I don't think that their motives are to simply make things safer. I think their motives are to take guns away from American citizens. Everybody knows the reason that they won't give an inch on this assault rifle thing or gun restrictions is because they know that once they get that wedge in, you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. They'll just keep taking and keep taking and keep taking. I don't think that their intentions are as honorable and honest as they say they are on the conservative side of this.
I see, and I wonder though, but I mean, these all opinions come from people's deep-held beliefs. I mean, why is it you believe those who want to restrict these want to do that? I mean, is it because they must genuinely feel that it is a danger? You, I know, disagree with that, but I mean, when you say it's disingenuous, I mean, that's truly the way they feel, though. I mean, everyone wants to live in a safer country. Now, the debate as to what makes it safer is something that rages on, right?
Well, I think that there are people out there that think, well, I don't like smoking, so you shouldn't smoke. Mm-hmm. I'm afraid of guns. I don't think guns are safe, so I don't think you should own a gun.
I see.
You got to be careful with things like that. These are certain inalienable rights that have been given to us to not be infringed upon. It means given to us by God, and no man is to stand between us and those rights. And those rights aren't to protect hunting. Those rights are to protect us against our own government. And people there's a lot of ignorance out there, and they don't realize the importance of that. To maintain a democratic society, a democracy, the people have to be in control. And the only way for the people to be in control or to have those weapons against the government in case the government gets so far out of control they try to take all your rights away from you. I don't understand what the disconnect is here, but I am against the media saying guns, and throwing every gun violence thing on television in front of the people every time they get a chance to try to, turn people against guns. And it's not I've said it before, I'll say it to the end of time. It's not the guns causing the problems. It's the desensitization of people. Monkey see, monkey do. People want to just mock what they see in the movies, mock what they see on the video games. That's the problem. That's the reason we're seeing it in school so much with kids now.
Right, yeah, boy, some of those video games are pretty hardcore. I'll agree with that. As far as the media, I mean, we bring up the issue of the shootings, and you're crazy if you don't think something like what happened in San Bernardino is not newsworthy. We're going to report it now. We're not going to make an issue ourselves. It's the spin doctors who come afterwards on both sides saying, what was the cause of that? And again, I got to say this, though. The whole arming yourself to protect yourself from your government, I know in an extreme scenario whereby maybe someday we rise up in revolution, perhaps having your own gun. But I'm sorry, Tony. The moment that happens and the government wants to come to get you, they're going to come with a Harrier jet to your house, and you're going to be able to do nothing. So I just don't buy that whole argument. I'm defending myself. Should I have to rise up against my government? You will lose. All right, so...
Well, not necessarily, but I think...
Well, we can have our militias and stuff, but come on. In this day and age with smart bombs and everything, God forbid something like that came to that point. You have no chance.
The most recent example in the country that I'm aware of where that's occurred is what's referred to as the Battle of Athens, Tennessee, 1946. I think 46, where local citizens, in response to a corrupt local government going through an election cycle, mainly men who had just come back from the war, took up weapons that they had used in the war and displaced the local government right here in Tennessee. Now, I don't know of an example since the Battle of Athens.
Well, now, did you see the movie Red Dawn?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, now, that's not based on truth. But look, I hear it again, and I understand where Tony's coming from about his right to own a weapon. So let's go to Mark. Mark, good morning.
Morning, Nick.
Hi, Mark.
Hey, I got a question. Do you think it's right for a convicted felony that's a homeowner to have the right to bear arms?
All right, how does that play out, by the way? And that was something else Tony talked about. If you're a felon, a non-violent felon, is there a way that you can get your gun rights back?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And that depends on the circumstances. But just in 2013, Tennessee passed a statute that allows non-violent felons who have Class E felonies, which are the lowest grade. So, like writing a bad check, for example.
Okay.
Who have only had one run-in with the law, one conviction on their record, can seek an expungement and completely remove those records from the public record. Doing that, successfully doing that, restores their ability to own a firearm.
As far as violent felons, if you've got an armed robbery, ag robbery on your record, the odds are you're probably never going to be able to own a gun again.
Correct. In Tennessee, under current law, if you have a violent felony or a felony drug offense, either one of those under a state Supreme Court decision called State versus Johnson, under the current statutes, you would not be able to regain the ability to possess a firearm. Now, that could change by legislation, but under current statutory scheme, violent felons and felony drug offenders are permanently prohibited.
Oh, that's an interesting debate because you think about sometimes you come across folks who have had those violent felonies 20 years ago.
Right.
And they've turned it back around, and you have an individual like this last caller, maybe Mark, who now is a homeowner and wants to have a gun for his own personal protection, is no longer a threat to society, has proven so over the last 2 decades. But you're out of luck.
Well,
So,
there's an excellent example right here in Nashville with the minister out at Cornerstone.
Oh yeah, Murray Davis.
Murray Davis.
Yeah.
He's got some type of homicide history conviction. Turned his life around. He's one of the most successful preachers in the Nashville area. If you look at it by size of congregation, at least.
Oh, yes. Cornerstone churches.
And he is. He's got to rely on armed security, I guess, rather than self-defense.
Take a break on that note. If you're on hold, stay there. More of your calls. More of your questions for John Harris, and we've got a couple lines open, 737-7587, and it's good. We've got it up there, gun laws. This is not a debate this morning. It's more of a discussion, some of the things that are happening lately with regard to guns and gun regulations, which, of course, the Tennessee Handgun or Firearms Association is involved with. We'll be back right after this.